Today, I'm gonna talk about 5 common mistakes that I see wedding photographers make, like in terms of technicalities, in terms of how they shoot. And this comes from like working with many second photographers or reviewing other photographers' work online. My name is Magic. I'm a destination wedding photographer. I've been shooting weddings for over 12 years now. I'm a Sony Europe ambassador, and for the last 3 years, I've been also running this YouTube channel talking about cameras, lenses, gear, and technique for wedding photography specifically. So if you're a wedding photographer, consider subscribing to this channel. All right, first mistake is actually wrong exposure settings, like completely messing up the settings. Like this happened to me many times, like receiving photos from my second shooters that during a certain scenes of the day, I saw them struggling with the parameters. And like, don't get me wrong, I love my second shooters. They're great. I often work with the same people and they're really nailing it every single time. But from time to time, I can see those like settings and be like, oh, what happened here? And I'm like, here's the example. So this is like a first look moment. And for some reason, the shutter speed is just way below what is acceptable for like a moment like this to capture, to freeze that motion. And like the f-stop is just way too high. Like, of course, I get that. You can also experiment on the wedding day. You can like play with motion blur. You can play with f aperture, to get like the most of the depth of field. But, in crucial situations like this, so this is a first look, the experimenting might not be the best idea. And I do think that this problem comes with shooting manual. Yes, I said that. The problem is shooting manual. You might not like that, but I am aperture priority, auto ISO lover. This is how I shoot these days. I used to shoot manual for years, but after switching to mirrorless and being able to see the full exposure on the screen every time I shoot, there's no reason for me to shoot manual and to like constantly changing my settings, dialing my ISO, dialing my shutter speed, because on the wedding day, everything changes so fast. One time you're in a shade, the second time the sun is shining, then you're indoors. You're constantly changing the parameters, and there's no need to do that manually because the cameras can do it for us based on our input. I still control the output of the image. I fully understand the exposure triangle. I control the aperture, meaning the depth of field. I do still control the shutter speed, the minimum shutter speed. I have it set to custom buttons so I can switch back and forth to decide what I want to do. But I don't have to care about the ISO because ISO is irrelevant these days. The cameras are just so good at high ISOs that I don't see a need like keeping the lowest ISO all the time. I said that if you're interested in that, I'm like, for sure I'm going to be making a video about shooting aperture priority only now these days, but like this could solve a lot of these problems because camera wouldn't go lower with the shutter speed during a moment like this. And you could still control the aperture and decide what aperture you can go. And looking at this particular picture, what camera would do when shooting aperture priority and auto ISO would go higher ISO to make shutter speed like 1/250 of a second, or like the minimum shutter speed you set up. This way you wouldn't have motion blur and you could still decide that you can shoot f9 if you want to. All right. The second one being the photographers often expose the image like either on zero or overexpose it a bit. So let's look at this picture. This is also like kind of very important moment. This is like a one of a kind moment. Like the groom is coming towards the bride for the first time, down the aisle to see her. And you see the sky is completely overexposed. And what cameras can't do, they cannot recover those highlights. This is like too much. This was shot also with Canon. Canons, they suck, right? I'm just joking. Sony's the best. But in a situation like this, it's way more practical to underexpose the image, even by 1 or 2 stops, because modern cameras have zero problems pushing the shadows up by 1 or 2 stops, or even 3 with some of like my Sony cameras. You can go like +3 with exposure and bring back tons of stuff from shadows, but you cannot recover the highlights. So my recommendation when shooting like this would be just like to underexpose to make sure that the sky isn't blown up, that you can like retain some of that sky in the photos. The third one being, I call it sloppy framing. I'm going to use this photo as the example. What you can see in that image, that there's way too much stuff above, the head of the groom coming, and the legs are cut a bit. It's a central framing, but look at this. If you imagine if there's a central point of autofocus right in the middle, that's where the face is. And I feel like this is the problem. If you're using central AF point, or you are used to shooting DSLRs when you could only shoot with a center point of the autofocus, you would end up having photos that are framed within the limits of the way you shoot. Do you understand what I'm saying? That you're shooting, focusing right in the center, you're just clicking the photo, and you do not frame the photo. These days, cameras can track the face, can track the subject throughout the entire frame. So my recommendation here would be to, lock on the subject, track the face, keep the shutters at half pressed so you can keep tracking the subject, and then recompose so you can work on your framing. Make this framing a better framing, not super center framing. You could just go slightly lower to show more of the stuff, more of the people on the left and on the right. And we don't need that all that negative space on the top. I'm guilty of that too. That happens to me often too. Some situations are super stressful. You're shooting really fast, so you're just clicking. But yeah, if you can take a time to think about composition, to think about your frame, then your photos will surely benefit from that. The fourth one being, many photographers, I see that working with many photographers, are afraid to coming closer to the subject. So they're shooting from the distance, shooting longer lenses, shooting from the distance, which is okay sometimes, variety is a good thing. Having various photos delivered from the wedding day, I believe that this is the way to go, having a lot of different angles, a lot of different ways to shoot. But if you shoot everything from a distance, then it's, in my opinion, it's a bit boring. And I do love shooting short lenses 24 and 35 and coming really close to the subjects. First of all, building that relationship with couples beforehand allows you to be, to be there for them, to be a person that they want to be around with. But then it gives you photos that just feel different. You can shoot wider angle that gives also that kind of a cinematic look to it. I didn't want to say that, but yes, cinematic look to it. So wider angle, close. So if you are the type of photographer that likes to shoot from the distance, I highly encourage you to challenge yourself and try to shoot closer. Take your 35, take your 24 and shoot closer to fill the frame with people, to fill the frame with emotions, show that stuff from a closer perspective. Your end result can only benefit from that. Before going to the number 5, if you're interested in me reviewing your photos and, analyzing your settings, your framing and so on, I do have few spots left for this month. I call it a full wedding set review. So if you're a wedding photographer, you can set me a full catalog, full Lightroom catalog. I'll go over that catalog. I will record a video of me going through that and letting you know what I think about the settings, framing and everything, pointing out the strengths, but also if there are some things that I see that there is the space for improvement, I'll let you know. Their link is in the description. I have, I believe, 6 spots left for this month for reviews like this. Okay, point number 5 is not knowing how to use flash. And using flash is crucial for wedding photography. Not only the flash has become this huge trend these days in the last 2 years, photographers are shooting flash all the time now, but even let's just talk about it's getting dark, you just need flash. And what I see when I have photos from other photographers, reviewing photos from other photographers, I can see how many photos are just shot wrong, with wrong settings, with wrong flash settings, with wrong camera settings, and it's just a huge waste of opportunity. I don't have one specific tip how to use flash because there's just like tons of ways how to use it, but take time to invest in the flash knowledge, take time to test the flash settings at your home, even outdoors. If you want to shoot outdoors flash at home, try different settings. My recommendation is start like learning just like a simple bounce flash, like try to understand how the bounce flash works, how different settings affect the flash. Switch your camera to manual for that, switch your flash to manual for that, and just, and just play around with it. There's nothing else you can do than train this. This is definitely a skill that can be easily trained. And if you want a little shortcut, I do offer a flash for wedding photographers course over 2 hours of showing you different settings, different setups of how you can use flash at wedding days. This one is also linked in the description. Let me know in the comments if you are guilty in any of these mistakes. We are all here to learn together and to grow together. Thanks so much for watching. See you guys soon. Bye.